Hey, welcome back to class, everyone, for another weekly dose of Doodling with Purpose, your week-by-week class on learning ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Kind of Middle Kingdom-ish, maybe a little of the Old Kingdom, but, languages do evolve over time. But, hey, we're doing, the stuff you see in museums, because it's fun. Doodle with purpose. All right, last week's homework. Hopefully you have written this down, you've transcribed it, and the first thing we're going to do anytime we have a new set of hieroglyphs to translate is we do the transliteration first, making sure we're also paying attention to all of the sound marks so we know exactly how to pronounce those Ks. Are they Ks or are they Qs? Are they Hs or are they Hs? All right, well, that first word, hopefully we recognize, because we've been using that for several lessons in a row now to start off our homework, and that is the ewe, the papyrus, and the chick, which is your stop sign that you're about to enter the past tense, which is very common on lots of monuments because they're talking about the past. So this is literally translated into someone in the past did something. But it's not actually part of the sentence, it's just there as your sign, kind of like the upside down question mark in Spanish, that you're entering a question. So this tells you we're entering the past. That first word, hopefully you remember, is the verb to see, with the double vultures there. And this is followed by a water sign. And we know when the water sign, and when we're in past tense, follows a verb, that essentially that's like adding an ed. So you're going from to see to seen. And who did the seening? The seeing? Who saw? Who saw? Well, we saw, because you have the pronoun we directly under the water sign, which is another water sign, but this time followed by 3 hash marks to pluralize that we're talking about multiple people. All right, then the next line starts off with a direct ideogram, per, which when it has that stroke line, it means a house. After that, we have kum, which is a word we learned about 2 or 3 lessons ago for black. Following that on the third line, we start off with the owl, which the owl alone can be from, with, in, or as. And you'll have to use structure and sentence clues to see which version it is. And the last word being Kemet, which we learned is the word for Egypt. At least, well, not Egypt, but what they called their land. So, reading out the whole thing, we have, we saw the black house in Egypt. I suppose you could say from Egypt or with Egypt. That doesn't really work. But in feels like it works the best. And that's how you know which definition to use when you see something like the owl alone, which can have 4 definitions. All right, so continuing along our bilateral signs, we have meh, and then remember the H with the dot under it there is hiss, like an H, and what you're drawing here is a whip, like Devo or Indiana Jones. So it's a little tricky to draw, this one. You're going to start at the right bottom, go up, duck around, swoop up, and then make your second curve. So let me draw it out for you here. I actually like to start going with the upper curve. All right, and zoop, there we go. And then you add a little bit extra, and there you have your whip. All right, so here we have me, followed by the flax, which is also, and then, me, it's MH, there we go, followed by H, followed by Y, followed by a T, and since you don't recognize that doodle at the end, it must be a determinative, because it's at the end and you don't recognize it. See how easy it is to do this? So what you're looking at is a sail, and we'll show why that's a determinative in a minute. So first off, we want to eliminate our echo sound. So anytime you have a single sound next to a bilateral sound, you can cross off the extra sound. So in this case, the H doesn't need to be pronounced because we already have the H represented in the whip sound of MH. And this is north wind. That's why you have a sail, because the winds hit sails. So that's sort of why the clues work. And if you know that what you're looking at is a sail, it helps jog your memory. All right, once again, we have another determinative at the end. We have MH followed by Y, so me would be how this is pronounced. And as always, any person or animal at the end is always a determinative. And in this case, we have a sitting man holding, I guess, what looks like maybe a knife. And this is a keeper or a guardian. I don't know why the person's holding a knife. I'm sure in ancient Egypt they had a reason for that, but hey, when you see this determinative at the end, you're dealing with a keeper or a guardian. And I don't think it's a keeper like in Quidditch or something. I think it's someone who keeps things. All right, next up we have our milk jug with a strap around it, or a water jug with a strap around it is what you're looking at here. So that loop at the top, that is the strap, and those two straight lines are what keeps it attached to the milk jug at the bottom. It's how people walked around with water back in the day. All right, so this is me. So M-I, followed by N, the water sign, and then the sun sign, which could be pronounced Ra, but at the end it's most likely a determinative. So the determinative for sun or day. And which day are we talking about? Well, if you were in France, it would be aujourd'hui, which means the day of today. Or we can just shorten that to today. So that's how you say today. One of my favorite words. You probably already know the definition of this one already, based on the fact that there's a determinative of an animal at the end. But let's sound it out. So we have me, and then the chick for W. So it's pronounced mew. Get it? Mew, mew, mew. What do you think it is? One guess. Yep, that's the Egyptian word for cat, mew. I love that. I love that their word for cat is mew. All right, next up we have the game board. So this is pronounced MN, and at first I actually thought this was checkers or chess, and it kind of looks like chess, but it's not. They didn't have chess, but they did have a very similar game called Senet, which you can still buy. Not like American, like the Senate. It's Senet, S-E-N-E-T. So it's a fun game. You can get it on Amazon. There's modern versions. I do remember that it's men, like chessmen, even though this isn't chess, but it does kind of look like a chessboard. So here we have MN, followed by N, followed by netter, followed by F and R. So we definitely have some echo sounds here. And of course at the end, what's that? That's our determinative, and hopefully you remember that the circle with the X, while I'd like to say it's the symbol for Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, it's the symbol for a place or a town. So let's see if you can kind of sound this one out. It's actually a very famous town that we have both in Egypt and in modern America. So nefer, fur. Well, of course, you can get rid of all those extra sounds that you don't need anytime there's a single sound that is butted up against a bilateral, or in this case, we even have trilateral sounds. And once you've eliminated the extra sounds, which are added for aesthetic reasons, we're left with minfer, which in ancient Egyptian would be Memphis. So we call it Memphis, they call it Menfer, and there you go. That's where Memphis comes from. All right, here's an interesting one also with the game board, followed by the sound NW 3 times. Now, usually when we see sounds repeated, it's because of a verb tense, like how we had the verb for to see with the two vultures earlier in today's lesson. But this is one of those interesting exceptions where when you have a bilateral sound 3 times, not a single sound, the verbs only apply to single. When you like to see, the repeated sound is one sound, the ah sound. But here we have the NW sound repeated 3 times, and that's to pluralize it or to emphasize, much as we did for the word beautiful and perfect quite a few lessons ago. So we don't need to cross these off. We just know that the extra NWs are there to imply plurality. And what this is the word for monuments, because you don't just have one monument, you have many monuments. You know, like the ones in Memphis. Lots of monuments in Memphis. Ooh, I should have used that for the homework this week. Maybe next week. All right. Speaking of homework, bam, there you go. So let's take a crack at this, just like you did earlier for this week's lesson, and translate it, and we'll meet back next week to see how everyone did. So have fun with this one, and you're really doodling with purpose now. We've come a long way. We're more than halfway through those bilateral signs, and we'll keep going. I hope you enjoyed yet another lesson. Thank you for stopping by and liking, sharing, and, well, just being part of class. See you guys next week, and if you have any questions, just leave them for me in the comment section. Thanks so much, and keep doodling with purpose.